Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about all things Booker 2024 and I'm excited to share with you. If you're new to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I love books and reading and I really enjoy following prizes. And so if you find yourself enjoying this video and you're watching as an unsubscribed person, I would encourage you to subscribe and stick around. Without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Much to my own surprise, I actually was really hooked by the Booker this year. Last year, not so much. This year, I think it was a combination of having already read one of the books, which was Percival Everett's James, and seeing names that I recognized, like Rachel Powers, Rachel Kushner, Richard Powers, Sarah Perry, Hashim Matar. They were all names on the long list that I was like, oh yeah, I know that name. And then there was also this element of fun and surprise with new names that I've never heard of. And so it was a mixture of all of these things that I think made me quite excited about this year's long list. And so I dove in headfirst and I decided to just go for it. The first book that I finished was Sarah Perry's Enlightenment, and actually I filmed a review thinking that it was going to be a standalone video, but I had a couple of additional thoughts that I wanted to add, and so I decided why not just make this a bit of a vlog or a chatty video that has more than just one element to it, more than just a single book review. So I will roll the thoughts that I have for Sarah Perry's Enlightenment, and just know that past Shelley didn't know that she was going to be talking any further about the rest of the list, and so in context, I thought I was filming a single book review. I'll try and trim off some of the fat, some of the intro stuff and outro stuff, and so you'll get the meatiest, juiciest parts of the review, even though if I remember correctly, I ramble quite a bit. So just hang on to your hats for rambly Shelley to embark. Let me share with you a little bit storytime style how I got to actually picking up Enlightenment by Sarah Perry, in case some of you all were like me and initially besmirching the book. So when the Booker long list was announced, and I was doing some initial research, there is a splashy quote from some reviewers saying that Enlightenment is quite like Possession by A.S. Byatt. And I have read Possession. I've talked about it quite a bit on my channel as a book that, though I can appreciate the work that Byatt put in, and I can absolutely see her talent and all of the praise that she has received for Possession and other works, the book itself really wasn't for me. There was a little bit of a snobbery and uptightness to it that I just didn't jive with. There was a point in which, when I was reading Possession, I just wanted her to crack a smile, bring it back down to earth, joke around a little bit, loosen up, have a little fun. And so I've always been somebody who, again, sort of from afar, from an intellectual point of view, can see the talent, Byatt's talent, but Possession itself really wasn't for me. So when I saw Enlightenment being compared to Possession, I was like, ugh. But then I also saw that it was saying that it's about a friendship and it's got a romance in it. And I declared myself a hopeless romantic. Then I watched a video after sort of digesting the long list, like the announcement and sort of getting my initial thoughts out. I watched a video by Daniel at the channel Guilty Feet. I will leave his channel link down below. He is phenomenal. And he talked about how he was actually quite surprised at how much he liked Sarah Perry's Enlightenment. And so that got me thinking, and he and I exchanged a couple comments, and he gently encouraged me to read it because I did proclaim myself to be a hopeless romantic, and so I might actually quite like the book. And I'm so glad that he did, because as we dive into this book, we are talking about two friends. They are eons apart. We meet Thomas when he is 40 years old. He is a writer in Essex, but like in a small subset of Essex. I don't know my British geography very well. I'm not really sure what the Essex thing is and like the identification of being someone from Essex. I don't really know, but I know that Sarah Perry represents Essex in some official way, and she has written at length about Essex now because Enlightenment is set in Essex, and the Essex Snake, which is her other big splashy book, or big like proclaimed well-renowned, well-read book. And they both take place in Essex. And so here we are again in Essex, and we're with Thomas. And he is a writer. He's about 40 years old, and he is a churchgoer. We'll get into the importance of that in a moment. And he is friends with a 17-year-old, but not necessarily friends, as more of a fatherly figure, somebody who is like fatherly adjacent. He has known Grace for basically her entire life and is acquaintances and friends with her father and her aunt and knows her whole life story. And in a lot of ways, the comment of like, it takes a village to raise a child, Thomas is part of Grace's village. And so they have this sort of, I don't know, this more father-daughter type relationship than anything else that I can sort of compare it to. It's light and lighthearted at times. Sometimes Thomas plays this role where he gives her some advice. But anyways, so you have this friendship, and I'm going to read you some quotes from Sarah Perry's book in just a minute. And basically the setup is that Thomas sort of finds out that there was somebody in the past who lived in the same area that he lived, that lived in this house called Lowland's house. There was a woman that lived there that may have or may not have discovered a comet, and that she had, that she was really invested in astrology. I don't know. Astronomy. I don't know why I doubt myself. Most of the time I am right. So you have this woman that lived about 100 years ago who was really interested in the stars, and we are starting to get some documents, or Thomas is starting to uncover some letters and documents, a diary, and he is starting to put together this picture of this woman who has this history in Essex for being a bit of a ghost. And he's actually trying to put flesh and blood to this figure that has, in a lot of ways, haunted this area. Though it's not a scary book at all. It's sort of like haunted in a very like Victorian way, non-scary, just like a spirit of the town that maybe like scared children, but is not scary now. So we have this friendship. We have this mystery woman of the past, Maria. So we have this friendship between Thomas and Grace, and we have this mystery woman that mostly Thomas is interested in discovering who she was. And along the way, it's kind of this like quirky story that unfolds in this way that is both entertaining and a bit odd, if I'm going to be honest, because sort of at the heart of it, that's really the crux of it, friendship, the mystery. But then there's also love interests and family dynamics that happen, and a lot of philosophizing about God and nature, and the universe, like the universe at large, the stars. And it's interesting because we touch base with our main characters in this time in which they're 20, or not 20, but 17. Grace is 17 and Thomas is 40. And then we jump forward in time and we touch base with them again years later. And then we jump forward in time again and we touch base with them again. And there are a kind of a core set of characters that we follow, and we see Thomas and Grace sort of reconnect with people that they had lost connection with. with. We see how their relationships mature and grow. We see things break and like fall apart and then come back together. And weirdly, I almost wouldn't say that this is a love story as much as it is almost like a very quirky found family. If the family is, yeah, it's like a very, very quirky found family story. It's hard to identify. And in that way, I think that the struggle to put my finger exactly on what it is kind of what I like about it. It's kind of doing a lot, and I like that in this book. But I think the thing that stands out the most is Sarah Perry's writing. Her writing is awesome. I didn't know. I am somebody who is such a sucker for beautiful writing that when I initially picked up this book, I sort of, Daniel got me interested in picking this up. And then I actually picked it up. And I think the thing that sucked me in, the thing that gripped me, was the way that she described things. So I'm going to read you a couple passages. The first one is about Thomas. So it says, "A man of 50, Thomas Hart, and a man of Essex, for his sins, tall and retaining as much hair as he had at 40. This is probably why I thought he was 40, which is to say, more above the collar than the brow. Dressed as has always been his habit, in clothes chosen to be admired by the observant. A jacket single-breasted in Harris tweed, a white shirt cuffed with silver links, a tie of oatmeal knitted silk, a face he does not deceive himself is handsome, but understands to be memorable, the nose not symmetrical, but of a pleasing, emphatic size, the eyes large, direct, and approaching green." I just really liked this description. There was something, I don't know, like funny, sweet, perfectly aligned to like who we find out Thomas to be. So then we have our other character. Let me scroll to where she is. Here is Grace's description, which is about 20-ish pages in. The Thomas description is like on page 2. So, Grace McCulley, then 17, small and plump, with skin that went brown by the end of May. Her hair was black and oily and had the hot, consoling scent of an animal in summer. She disliked books, and was by nature a thief if she found a thing to be beautiful but not hers. She didn't know she couldn't sing. She was inclined to be cross. She had the sullen, wordless affection of a farmyard animal, and the habit of butting her small body like a lamb against Thomas, who loved and resented her as he imagined a father might love and resent a daughter. So we have these two characters. Again, it's a little bit found family, but I was surprised at how philosophical this book was. This book was so much more about two people who both feel they have a strong connection to church and a very, very strong connection to people in their town. Even, people that are closest to them, and yet they feel a distance from them as well, and a distance from the church. It's almost like having one foot in church and one foot outside of church, and not really knowing what to do, but sort of depending on where life is at that moment, there's maybe more connection to religion and to God and to church, and then maybe at different times in one's life, there is less of a connection to God and religion and that part of one's life. And so it's really a fascinating book, especially since I have been somebody who's kind of been in those camps, figuring myself out in a lot of ways. I could really relate in some ways to like Grace and Thomas and the way that they approached life and their philosophizing about what it means to be someone who goes to church and has a connection with church. But then also there is just this really lovely little thread through it all of like, is our life fated? Is it predestined? How much is God, how much is God involved in our lives? Or is our life sort of, is it written in the stars because there is this astronomy theme? It's all kind of all together. And meanwhile, we have, again, this like kind of quirky, odd, sometimes it feels like a bit fated story in which like people come in and out of each other's lives and decisions are made, and there are consequences to those decisions, and the way people grow and evolve and come into themselves and sometimes like move away from the selves that they used to have. All of that is like being sort of talked about and thought about. And then meanwhile, there is like this story about this ghost in the past. So I would say that in some ways, you can probably see with what I've read, some of Perry's descriptions, they to me were a lot more humorous and a lot more like, I don't know, loosely held than the Buy It book. So if you were somebody like me who maybe could appreciate possession but didn't love it, you may really, really enjoy Sarah Perry's writing. And if you are really somebody who enjoys beautiful writing and quirky characters who are, I don't know, in a lot of ways struggling with their inner lives and the philosophy of their own inner lives, I don't know, they struggle with themselves, then you might really quite like Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. I can definitely see why it's on the long list. The book itself, the whole thing is so beautifully rendered. I don't know if I loved all of it. Some of it felt quite a bit meandering, and in a lot of ways I felt like it sort of meandered to an end. So I don't know if it was like, in terms of a storyline, it was the tightest, but I do love the idea of possibly rereading this and rediscovering some things that I might have missed in my first go around. Themes and little interactions that I maybe glossed over the first time, because I do think that it's a book that might be well worth rereading, because not only is the language beautifully rendered, but the quirkiness and the oddities of these characters and the way they approach life, I think really could use some deeper digging. And then, of course, like By Its Possession, where she has poetry and letters and articles and all of that kind of stuff. Thomas Hart, our main character, he is a writer, and so we get some of his articles, and I really love the tone of his writing. Like it's just like this one page, I don't know, 600 word. Oh yeah, because the editor says 506, write me 500 words or 600 if it's, da 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 da, like if there's a clear night out and you have more to say. And so it's pretty short and snappy, these 500 to 600 words, and yet Thomas himself has this really like clear, concise writing voice that only comes out in his writing, but that still feels very him. And I really enjoyed that as well. So now that it's been about a week, I have some time away from Sarah Perry's Enlightenment, and I think I'm a little bit less enamored than I was maybe when I was speaking in the review. There are two things that stand out from the book to me. The first being that Sarah Perry's language is really lovely. She has what a style. I could tell you right now that I want to read another Sarah Perry book. She's just got a grasp to the English language and the way that she describes things, and the quirkiness of her writing is just fantastic. And the other thing is her characters. They still kind of have shape and body in my mind. But the rest of it, it's kind of like, I don't know, I could sort of give or take it. So that's the update on that. The next book that I fully read through was The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. Now, this is a thriller-esque book. I think somewhere out there someone compared it to Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I will say right now that if you think that you're getting a different, 21st century version of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, you will be sorely disappointed, because I think I kind of went in with those feelings. But very quickly in the book, we meet a character named Isabel, who's extremely paranoid. She also lives alone in this house in the country that is her family home, and she acquires a house guest. And so you could imagine a paranoid person who is already thinking that things are going missing. If you get a house guest that you don't necessarily trust and are feeling skeptical about, then the combination of those two things would really kind of put you into a mental spiral. So The book was very interesting. I do think so. There are queer vibes in it. It's very much billed as that. There were some scenes that were very spicy, like very spicy, to the point where I am not a prude. But I do think some things can be left to the imagination, if I do say so myself. It was just it was a little much. And it really, for me, detracted from the read. So there was that. And I will say that the best touchstone for me is not Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I really think Yael van der Wouden must be a fan, or should be a fan, of Sarah Waters. Or maybe fans of Sarah Waters would enjoy Yael van der Wouden. I've read one Sarah Waters book, The Paying Guests, and in some ways it's also got queer vibes in it, but all embedded within a very thrillery, pacey novel, The Paying Guests, that is. And so in a lot of ways, and it's also about a woman in a home and inviting house guests in, and then those house guests really pivot the owners' lives, the owners of the home's lives. So that's what happens in The Paying Guests. And so in a lot of ways, this book, The Safekeep, is doing something kind of similar to it. However, I felt like, in comparison, and maybe it's not a fair comparison, but Yael van der Wouden's language and her writing was just subpar to Sarah Waters. Sarah Waters' writing is so rich and lush and so descriptive, and she just slows down and writes these really beautiful cinematic scenes, and van der Wouden's book doesn't do that. Now, she wasn't intending to do that, that's another thing. But I also just feel that there is a twist in van der Wouden's book that was really good and really interesting, and I thought, wow, I never really thought that I didn't come up with the twist myself. I couldn't see it, but it was a good twist. I enjoy the twist. Just like in The Paying Guests, there's some really kind of interesting twists. Actually, there's more than one twist and turns that I really enjoyed as well, and that were pulled off incredibly well. But I will say, I read The Safekeep with my friend Anita, and she said it best, but van der Wouden really over-egged the pudding a little bit. It was just a little overwritten here, a little underwritten there. The twist was good, but I felt like it could have been more integrated. I felt like her writing could have been more lush, more descriptive. There was just, it's like at certain parts of it, it was like over-egged and underdone both at the same time. And so in that way, it didn't quite work for me. I do think that the twist really kind of upped its estimation in my mind. I think that when I remember the book, I'll remember the twist. But overall, I just thought, wow, it was really kind of a basic book for the booker. And in that way, I felt like it's such a shame, because there are so many other books that could have been elevated rather than this one. So, not necessarily a bad reading experience, but as somebody who is thinking critically about this book and trying to assess it to the best of my ability as a longtime reader, it really fell. It was subpar. It fell below the mark a little bit. So even though it was enjoyable, and I do think that readers are going to be glad that they were introduced to the book, and they're going to be glad to have read it, especially if you're into the themes that I've already mentioned. But the book itself could not hold its own, I suppose. And then the final book that I didn't finish, and it's really more of a book adjacent to the Booker, is There There by Tommy Orange. I started this book, and so There There is about, it's really about Oakland and the Indigenous persons that live in Oakland and their experience as Indigenous persons. And there is a literal powwow that happens. I didn't actually get to that part. I got a third of the way through it, and I did not jive with the writing style at all. There were so many characters, and I thought, okay, yeah, he may bring this all together, but at one point, that the one of the characters is talking about like going to the restroom or like not being able to go to the restroom, and it was just told in really crude language. And for me, I was just like, it's not me. Like, I know when I need to just cut myself off. And I was like, it got to that part and I was like, I gotta cut myself off. I'm just not enjoying it. I was like dreading going to pick it up. And so I couldn't do it. And you know, everyone has their line. And for me, Tommy Orange kind of toed over the line when it came to potty language, quite literally. You know, I have kids when I'm using the word potty in my video. So yeah, there was that. So I'm not going to get to Wandering Stars since it is both a prequel and a sequel, and it spoils their first book in Orange's duology. And also just overall, it really wasn't working for me because it was like it really felt like a collection of short stories that was going to culminate into an event and supposed to have like, you know, collective voice to represent a community, which I think in some ways can work very well if it's executed right. But in this instance, for me, and like the way it was being executed, it wasn't working for me. So I ended up DNFing that one. So at this point, I have read 3 books and I've DNF'd one and truly have decided that I'm not going to read Wandering Stars, even if it wins, that kind of thing. If it's your thing, awesome. You keep your thing. I don't want to, yuck someone's yum. Like, if you love it and you think it's awesome. For me, I'm just like, didn't work. And so, yeah, so I don't know, but I'm going to go. I will be back with final Booker thoughts when I come back. I'll get myself together about books that I'm still interested in, how I would rank the books I've already read, do a predictions shortlist, or shortlist predictions rather, and kind of give you like wrap up thoughts when I come back. But considering that I'm seeing you at the end of my workday and I'm a very tired woman right now, I'm going to stop this video now and I'll give you the rest of my thoughts in a bit. All right, so I'm back for rankings and predictions, shortlist predictions. So in terms of what I've read, I have to put the DNF at the bottom just because I didn't finish it. So it would be there / Wandering Stars, if I can group them, are going to be at the bottom of what I've read, even though I know I didn't technically read Wandering Stars, but I've decided that I'm not going to. So that's at the bottom. Then it would be The Safekeep would be next. Then it would be Enlightenment by Sarah Perry, and at the very top would be James by Percival Everett. I really love that book, and I wouldn't be surprised if it won. I would be actually surprised if it didn't win or wasn't moved to the shortlist. It's kind of like the shoe-in for the shortlist. And then in terms of what I think is going to make it, maybe my philosophy behind that, what is going to make the shortlist, that is I think that we're actually going to see the most seasoned authors on the shortlist. I remember the year that I read a bunch of books. It was the year that The Seven Moons of Molly Alameda won, and it seemed like a lot of the seasoned authors were the ones that moved on. So we had Elizabeth Strout that year, we had The Trees by Percival Everett. Just several of the names that had been around and were well established were the ones that were shortlisted. And then a lot of the new authors, the ones that everyone was excited about because they were brand new to the scene and people hadn't heard of them, those were the ones that stayed behind that year. So in terms of, and I think this year I think it's going to be the same. Let me know what you think will be shortlisted. What do you think is going to be shortlisted? So for sure, I think James is going to be shortlisted. I also think that My Friends by Hashim Matar will be shortlisted. I actually think that is going to be our most competitive. It's going to be the strongest competitor against James to win because of the subject matter and because of the way that people are responding to it. I actually think Tommy Orange's Wandering Stars will be shortlisted. So that's 3. I think that we're going to see Richard Powers on our shortlist. I really do. So that would be 4. Why does that seem funny to me? I think it almost seems like they're playing a bit of a trick, or it's a little bit of a sneaky thing that to put books that aren't out yet and are not accessible to readers on the long list of the Booker. And I just feel like it would be like a snicker. Like, I imagine the judges, even though they're probably not doing this at all, they're like snickering and being like, we know something the public doesn't know. And so that they would put Playground on the short list. It would be kind of sad if Rachel Kushner had did not make the short list, because her book Creation Lake is also not out. And what's interesting about that is that it would be interesting if it was long listed and then kicked off the long list, you know, if it wasn't shortlisted. It would be like it rise and fell in fame before it even had a chance to be out in the public's hand. And I find that kind of a strange thing. So far I have 4. I actually think Enlightenment might have a strong chance of making it. And then I think that last one is a toss-up. I really don't think it's going to be by anyone where it's their, what word am I thinking of? What is the word? Their debut. I don't think debut authors are going to make it. I don't think it'll be Headshot. Or weirdly, I don't think it'll be Orbital either. I feel like they threw that in for like the sci-fi moment. I actually don't think it'll be Wild Houses either. I think Held by Ann Michaels, is that right? Held is a little, I think it's too derisive. From what I've heard, the style, it either very much works for readers or it's not working for readers. So I feel like maybe there's a split judge panel on that. This is just speculation on my part. And that there are maybe a couple of judges that really like Held, and then there are a couple of judges that don't love it. So that's my thought. The last one I really just think is going to be a toss-up. I've heard nothing about This Strange Eventful History. Have you read it? What are your thoughts on that? I know nothing. But I think it could be Stone Yard Devotional. Yes. I really do. Or, you know, I just think that last one is just going to be a toss-up. So those are my shortlist predictions. I'll kind of make sure that they're all popped up on the screen so you could see them. And so far, in terms of like further reading for me and kind of my final wrap-up thoughts, in terms of further reading, I jumped on the Booker train. I read my couple of books. I tried 3, read 2. And then I felt like that was it. I did what I was supposed to be doing, and I'm done. That's kind of my feeling about it. And I have moved on to other things. I am reading totally different things, non-prize winning books. I've gone back to comfort zone stuff. So I really think it'll have to be the shortlist that will have to reinvigorate my interest in the Booker for me to pick up anything else. So right now it's kind of like I had this little Booker high and then it dove down, and now I'm back to my normal reading, and it really will have to be an exciting shortlist or like the buzz about it. And I think the book that I'm most interested in actually reading, because of the melancholic nature, the reflective nature of it, sounds like more of a Shelley book than any of the other books, and that would be My Friends by Hisham Attar. I just think that I would really enjoy it. The meditation, the meditativeness, the themes about art and loss and longing and being away from home would really be up my alley. But as of right now, I almost have I don't want to say I have no interest in reading it. As of right now, I'm really enjoying my reading life, which has nothing to do with the Booker. So in terms of future plans, that one has the highest chance of me reading it. And then, you know, what's on the table that we all haven't heard about are Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner and Richard Powers' Playground. So I'm wondering if when those hit the readers, like when they hit the scene and people are reading them and we start to get reactions, if either of those will suck me in. But the other ones, I feel very I've heard enough, and they don't intrigue me. They don't tickle my fancy a ton. And so the one I really want to read is My Friends, and that's about it. So that is it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Leave all of your Booker related thoughts down below. I read all of my comments. I really try my best to respond to all of my comments, and mostly I love all of your comments. I love reading them, and just communing about what's going on with the Booker and all books in general. What am I talking about? I'm signing off. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.